With a face marked by pain, she raised her eyes and asked, "Teach me not to cry anymore." The machete in her hands was the silent answer that would change everything. Subscribe to the channel and follow how pain can transform into strength and unexpected belonging. The Amazon jungle suffocated with its dense heat that December afternoon. Humidity hung from the branches, as if even the air was exhausted. Among the giant ferns and moss-covered trunks, with a swollen face and legs marked by deep scratches, Ryan walked aimlessly. Her brown eyes, once lively, now carried the redness of contained tears. The cotton dress, a gift from her deceased mother, displayed tears that told stories her 7-year-old voice couldn't articulate. On her small back, the invisible weight of the silence of someone who had heard promises that turned into lies. She had fled from her stepfather and godmother's house in Belém, fled from the endless punishments, the slaps that left marks, the words that wounded deeper than the blows. Her still-forming body had already developed the instinct to shrink before the aggression even arrived. The Tocantins River flowed not far away, but she had moved away from the banks for fear of being found. The village of Cametá had been left behind, along with hopes for a family that never really existed. That's when she spotted the man. He was bent over a fallen trunk, his machete rising and falling with the precision of someone born with a blade in hand. A riverside caboclo, tall with sun-tanned skin, a face marked by life surrounded by cut wood that would serve to build a new canoe. Tião of the River, as he was known by all who sought the best fishermen and woodsmen in the region. Ryan stopped a few meters away, breathing with difficulty, her heart racing between the fear of a new adult and the exhaustion of her escape. He didn't turn around. He continued his methodical work, as if he were alone in the forest. Until, with a trembling voice that barely left her throat, she managed to say, "If I help you carry wood, will you teach me not to cry anymore?" The machete stopped in midair, suspended like an interrupted thought. He turned slowly, without startling. His eyes fell upon the girl, not with surprise, but with something deeper, recognition, like someone who identifies a pain already felt in their own flesh. Without saying a word, he walked to a tree stump, picked up a small worn machete, and extended it to her. Ryan held the tool with both hands, trembling. She didn't say anything else. For hours they worked side by side, while the Amazonian sky transformed into a spectacle of colors that she had no time to admire. With each awkward blow she gave to the wood, he observed in silence. He corrected with dry gestures, precise movements, not with words. When the first stars appeared in the sky, she could barely keep her eyes open, exhausted from the escape, from hunger, from work. In the simple stilt house built on the edge of a narrow stream, he lit a kerosene lamp. The strong smell mixed with the aroma of tucupi with fish that boiled in a clay pot. He served her a full bowl along with water flour. Ryan ate slowly, feeling the food go down and fill the emptiness that wasn't just hunger. She sat near the improvised fire, eyes fixed on the flame, tears silently flowing. He didn't try to console her. He just sat nearby and began carving something in a piece of wood with his sharp knife. When sleep finally won, she curled up on the hammock of braided fibers and slept like someone who, for the first time in many months, didn't need to keep one eye open. In the following days, she stayed. She helped sweep the wooden floor, fetch fresh water from the stream, shoo away mosquitoes, prepare fishing bait. Tião didn't ask about her past. He just taught with patient gestures. He showed her how to sharpen the machete on the stone, how to listen to the sound of wood before cutting it, to know if it was good for a canoe, how to observe the ants to predict when heavy rain would come. Gradually, the bruises on her body disappeared, replaced by the natural tan of someone living under the Amazonian sun. But the pain inside her took longer to heal. On a particularly hot night, he found her sitting on the edge of the stilt house, legs dangling over the dark water, squeezing her eyes shut with force. He approached in silence, as he always did, and asked only with his gaze, "What are you doing?" She answered with her still small voice, "I'm trying not to cry anymore." He approached, crouched beside her, and said for the first time something longer since she had arrived, "Not crying isn't bravery, little one. Bravery is what you did when you decided to stay. Here you're already a daughter of the river." That's when the sounds of the forest suddenly silenced. Even the crickets seemed to hold their breath. Male voices were approaching. Flashlights cut through the darkness between the trees. Tião rose in a quick movement, took Ryan by the hand, and led her inside the stilt house. "Stay quiet," he whispered. As he grabbed his machete, the girl curled up in the darkest corner of the house, hugging her knees, her heart beating so hard it seemed to want to escape through her chest. She knew who they were even before hearing the voices calling her name. The men sent by Ryan's stepfather stopped in front of the stilt house. There were 3 of them, all known in the region for doing jobs no one else would accept. The leader, Malachias, a broad-shouldered man with a scar on his neck, knocked on the door forcefully. "We know the girl is there, Caboclo. We've come to get what's ours," he shouted, his voice heavy with the smell of cachaça. Tian went out to the small wooden veranda, the machete hanging at his waist, his eyes calm like the deep waters of the river on a windless day. "There's nothing of yours here," he replied, his voice low but firm, positioning himself between them and the door. "The child belongs to the family," insisted Malachias, taking a step forward. "They have documents. She's their legal property. The stepfather has custody." Tian didn't move. Not a muscle in his face betrayed any emotion when he answered, "Here she's already a daughter of the river." The men hesitated. They looked around, noting the scattered tools, the canoe construction work, the fish drying in the wind. Malachias narrowed his eyes. "We have 3 days to return to Belém with her. If we don't return, more will come. And they won't be just 3. Tian remained motionless, his feet planted like roots in the wooden floor. "3 days or not, my answer will be the same." The men retreated, whispering among themselves. They would return, everyone knew that. But that night, they left with nothing but frustration and the fatigue of a useless journey. When they entered the forest again, Tian went back inside. He found Ryan still curled up in the same corner, trembling like a leaf in the wind. He crouched in front of her and extended his calloused hand. "Let's go fishing," he said simply. She raised her teary eyes, confused. "Now it's night," he nodded. "The trahiras bite better under the moon." That night, in the small canoe that glided silently through the stream, Ryan learned more than just fishing. She learned that sometimes facing the darkness was the only way to find nourishment. Tian showed her how to feel the fish before even seeing it, how the taut line told stories that eyes couldn't read. When they returned hours later with a dozen fish, he finally spoke about what had happened. "They'll return. We have to decide." Ryan nodded, feeling the weight of those words. For the first time in her short life, someone was including her in a decision. "Decide what?" she asked as they cleaned the fish together. "Whether we stay or go further in." "Further in?" "Into the river, where only caboclos born in water know how to reach." The next morning, an unexpected visitor arrived at the stilt house. Donna Zuleide, the most respected healer in the region, appeared with her basket of herbs and her rosary always at hand. A 70-year-old woman, skin wrinkled like old pequi bark, eyes that seemed to see beyond the flesh. "The river told me there's a child needing strong prayer," she announced, without ceremony. Tian didn't ask how she knew. In those parts, Donna Zuleide always knew things before they happened. It was the kind of mystery no one questioned. The old woman sat on a low bench and called Ryan with a gesture. The girl approached, wary. "Come here, child. Let me see those eyes that have cried a full river." She passed her wrinkled hands over the child's face, murmured words in a language that mixed Portuguese with Tupi, closed her eyes as if listening to something only she could hear. "Those who hit children have no protection from saints or enchanted ones," she declared. "But those who protect children have the strength of a great anaconda." She looked at Tiao intensely. "They come in 2 days, not 3. And they come with a judge's paper in hand." Tiao nodded. "We're deciding whether to go further in." The old woman smiled, revealing few teeth. "Remember Jutsara Island, where your father taught you to make taquara arrows?" The fisherman frowned, surprised. "How do you know that?" Donna Zuleide ignored the question. "It's a good place. But first, bring the girl to my house tomorrow. I need to give her an herb bath to clean what she still carries." When the healer left, Ryan helped Tiao speed up the work on the new canoe. They worked until their fingers ached, until their backs begged for rest. The vessel needed to be ready in record time. That night, while they ate, Ryan finally asked, "Why are you helping me?" "You hardly know me." Tian continued eating for a few moments before answering. "When I was 8 years old, my father taught me that we're only truly human when we protect those who are weaker. He said not even animals mistreat their young, only lost people do that. He paused, looking at his own hands. And also because I was once like you, running from those who should have cared for me. It was the first time Ryan saw something like sadness in the caboclo's eyes. What happened? He shook his head. A story for another day. Now I need to teach you something important. He took her outside, where the stars seemed to pour over the stream. He pointed to the sky. See those 3 stars together? That's the Southern Cross. When you're lost, it shows the way. If you follow it, you'll always know where south is. Rayan looked fascinated. And if there are clouds? Etienne smiled slightly. Then you listen. The north wind sounds different from the south wind. The river always flows in the same direction. The birds have routines. Nature is always speaking, you just need to learn its language. The next morning, they went to Donna Zuleidy's house, a simple hut by the river, surrounded by a garden where herbs of all kinds grew, some that Rayan had never seen before. The old woman was already waiting for them with a steaming pot, where leaves, flowers, and roots floated. Take off your clothes. Girl, and get into the large basin over there, she ordered, pointing to a hollowed wooden container. Rayan looked hesitantly at Tiao, who nodded and turned his back, giving her privacy. The bath lasted almost an hour. Donna Zuleida poured the fragrant water over the child's head while reciting prayers, some in Portuguese, others in languages that seemed to come from another time. She rubbed her body with rough leaves, drew symbols on her forehead with dark clay. When she finished, she dressed Rayan in simple, clean clothes that seemed to have been saved for this occasion. Now she's clean inside and out, she announced, looking at Tiao, but that's not enough. They have papers, they have white man's law on their side. You need to go today. She handed Tiao a small package of leaves. Herbs for fever, for pain, to ward off the evil eye. And this... She removed a necklace of red seeds from her neck and placed it on Rayan. Pigeon's eye. It protects lost children, makes them be found by those with good hearts. When they returned to the stilt house, Tiao showed Rayan how to pack a bundle with only the essentials. Take only what you can carry without tiring, he instructed. In a few hours the new canoe was ready, waterproofed with pitch. The plan was to leave at dawn the next day, navigate against the stream's current to a smaller tributary, then follow trails known only to those who grew up in that green labyrinth, until they reached Jusara Island, a place that wasn't even on maps. That night, as they prepared their last meal in the stilt house, they heard a boat motor approaching. Tiao rose with a start. Go to the hiding place I showed you, he whispered. Rayan ran to the disguised hole in the floor, which led to a small space between the stilts and the water. It was tight, dark, but safe. From there she could hear the approaching voices. It wasn't just the men from before. This time Malachias brought with him 5 other men, including Josimar, Rayan's stepfather. Through the cracks in the floor she could see them climbing the stairs to the stilt house, flashlights illuminating the moonless night. Her heart was beating so hard she was sure they could hear it. Above, the boards creaked with the weight of many steps. Where's the girl, Tiao? The stepfather's voice was as Rayan remembered, harsh, cutting like a dull knife that tears instead of cutting cleanly. I've already said there's no one here but me. Tiao replied, his voice calm as always. Liar, shouted Josimar. Sounds of objects being thrown to the floor, furniture being dragged. They were turning everything upside down. I have the documents here. The custody is mine. She ran away and the law says I have the right to take her back. The law also says children shouldn't have belt marks on their backs, retorted Tiao, his voice now carrying a tone that Rayan had never heard before. A dry sound like a slap. Then the thud of a body against the wall. Mind your own business, Caboclo. You've messed with the wrong family. I have friends in the police, in the courthouse, even in the Belém newspaper. No one will believe a fisherman without a surname against a respected merchant. Josimar's laugh was like the shell of a sea urchin, rough on the outside, empty inside. More sounds of struggle. Chairs breaking, a groan of pain that Rayan recognized as being from Tiao. She wanted to scream, to leave the hiding place, but she remembered the promise she had made. Whatever happens, stay quiet until I come to get you. The rain began to fall. First lightly, then with the typical fury of the Amazon. The heavy drops muffled the sounds of the fight up above. Rayan trembled, now not only from fear but also from the cold wind coming from the river. She hugged herself, feeling the seed necklace Donna Zuleide had given her. She closed her eyes and tried to do what Tiao had taught. Breathe deeply, listen to the river, trust. She didn't know how long she stayed there, curled up. It could have been minutes or hours. The rain was subsiding when she heard a low, almost inaudible whistle. The agreed signal. She came out of the hiding place with difficulty, her limbs numb. It wasn't Tiao who was waiting for her, but Hukinya, a caboclo boy of about 12 who sometimes helped with fishing. "Come with me," he whispered. "Tiao sent me." "Where is he?" "He'll explain later. Now we have to go." They followed the stream bank, avoiding any clearings where they might be seen. The mud made walking difficult, but Hukinya knew that path like the back of his hand. After almost an hour, they reached a bend in the river where a canoe waited, hidden among the dense vegetation. To Rayan's surprise, Donna Zuleide was inside. "Get in quickly, girl," the old woman commanded. "We need to reach the island before dawn." Rayan hesitated. "But what about Tiao?" The healer made an impatient gesture. "He'll meet us there. Now let's go, the time is short and the river waits for no one." Hukinya pushed the canoe into the water and jumped in with the agility of someone born in boats. He paddled strongly, guiding them through paths that Rayan couldn't even distinguish in the darkness. The sky was beginning to lighten when they finally reached a stretch where the stream opened into wider waters. In the middle, an island covered with dense vegetation rose like a secret kept by the river. They docked at a small beach of light sand, hidden behind tall bushes. Only experienced eyes could notice the entrance. On the island, to Rayan's surprise, there was a hut, smaller than Tiao's stilt house, more rustic, clearly made to be temporary and discreet. "It was built 3 days ago," explained Donna Zuleide, noticing the girl's look. Tiao knew this moment would come. "How?" "Girl, those who live by the river learn to read the signs. Your stepfather isn't the first bad man who has tried to claim what isn't rightfully his." Hukinya returned to the canoe. "I'll get more supplies and see if I can find Tiao on the way," he announced. "You two stay here. No one knows this place besides us." When the boy left, Donna Zuleide began to arrange the interior of the hut. There were mats for sleeping, simple pots, a stove improvised with stones. "Come help me gather dry firewood," she called. "We'll need fire to keep the mosquitoes away." As they worked, the old woman told stories about the island. This was a sacred place for the ancients. They say a very strong indigenous woman named Jusara saved her entire tribe from a great sickness by making a medicine with herbs that only grew on this island. Afterward, she taught other women to know the plants. That's why only women knew the way here. Rayan listened, fascinated. "Then how does Tiao know it?" Donna Zuleide smiled. "Because his mother was one of those women. She died when he was little, but before that she taught him all the secret paths." The day passed slowly. They ate fruits harvested on the island and dried fish that the healer had brought. In the afternoon, Donna Zuleide taught Rayan to identify some medicinal plants that grew there. "This one," she showed a broad leaf with serrated edges, "cures stomach pain. This other one," she pointed to a climbing plant with yellow flowers, "is good for high fever." The girl absorbed each piece of information eagerly, as if the old woman's words were water, for someone who had been thirsty for days. When night fell, Hukinya had not returned. Neither had Tiao. Donna Zuleide lit a small fire inside the hut where the light couldn't be seen from afar. "Let's sleep. Tomorrow will be another day." But Rayan couldn't close her eyes. Every sound from the forest, every movement of the water around the island made her start. What if Tiao was hurt? What if they had discovered where they went? What if Hukinya had been captured? The what-ifs multiplied in her head like gnats in flood season. That's when she heard it. A low whistle, almost imperceptible, the same signal Hukinya had used. She rose with a jump, her heart pounding. Donna Zuleide, who apparently wasn't sleeping either, held her arm. "Wait," she whispered. "It could be a trap." The whistle repeated, now in a specific pattern. 3 short notes, 1 long, 2 short. The old woman relaxed. "It's him." They left the hut. On the beach, barely illuminated by the crescent moon that finally appeared between the clouds, was Tiao. But he wasn't alone. He was carrying Hukinya in his arms. The boy seemed unconscious. "What happened?" asked Donna Zuleide, running to help. "They caught him trying to return. They beat him to make him confess where we were." Tiao's voice was tense. "I managed to get him away from them, but not without cost." By the light of the fire inside the hut, Rayan could see that Tiao was also injured. A deep cut on his left arm, his face swollen in several places. Donna Zuleide worked quickly, cleaning both their wounds with herbal infusions, applying macerated leaves to the cuts, murmuring prayers as she made each dressing. Juquinha woke during the process, moaning in pain. He had one eye so swollen he could barely open it. "They know about the island," he said, his voice weak. "Someone from the village told. They'll come in the morning with more people." Tiao nodded gravely. "I suspected this when I saw boats preparing. That's why I was delayed. I was checking alternative routes." Donna Zuleide finished the dressings and sat down, suddenly looking older and more tired. "We have to leave before dawn. Go farther away." "Where to?" asked Ryan, her voice trembling. Tiao looked at her intensely. "Remember what I taught you about the Southern Cross?" She nodded. "We'll follow it." "To the interior. I know communities where no one will find us." "But what about the judge's paper they have?" Tiao smiled slightly for the first time that night. "Paper only has value where there are people who respect it, little one. In the heart of the forest, a different law applies." While Donna Zuleide prepared a quick meal for them to regain their strength, Tiao told what had happened after Ryan's departure. "They beat me quite a bit, wanting to know where you were. When they saw they wouldn't get anything, Yosimar decided they would return to the village to get reinforcements and check other hiding places. They left 2 men watching the stilt house. I managed to free myself and escaped as soon as they left." He paused, touching the bandage on his arm. "I found Juquinha being interrogated by Malachias at the riverbank. The boy is brave, he didn't say anything. I had to use this to convince them to release him. He showed a fishing knife he always carried with him." "Was there a fight?" asked Ryan, her eyes wide. Tiao shook his head. "Just enough to defend ourselves. I don't like violence, but sometimes you need to show your teeth to keep predators away." The plan was quickly drawn up. They would leave 2 hours before dawn, when darkness was still almost complete, but there was enough light to navigate. They would follow a narrow channel that cut through the middle of the island, exiting on the opposite side, where no one would expect to find them. From there, they would head south toward higher lands, away from commercial routes. "How long until we reach a safe place?" asked Ryan. 3 days if all goes well," replied Tiao. "The community I have in mind is hidden between hills. They're quilombolas who have lived there for generations, people who know the value of protecting their own. Donna Zuleide would stay behind. I'm too old for this journey," she explained. "Besides, someone needs to mislead the pursuers. I'll lead them north while you go south." Rayan hugged the healer tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. The old woman smiled, caressing her hair. "Remember what I taught you about the plants. And never take off the necklace, you hear? It will protect you on the way." When they finally lay down to rest for a few hours before departure, Ryan couldn't contain her anxiety. She saw when Tiao silently left the hut and followed him. She found him sitting on the beach looking at the stars. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning around. "I'm afraid," she admitted, sitting beside him. "What will happen if they find us?" Tiao continued looking at the sky for a long moment before answering. "Did you know that the stars we're seeing now were already shining long before we were born? And they'll continue shining long after we're no longer here." He made a broad gesture toward the sky. "Our problems seem big to us, but to the river, to the forest, to the stars, they're just moments." He looked at her. "That doesn't mean they don't matter. It means we need to have the right perspective. And what is that?" "That our journey is long, little one. This is just the beginning. What we do now echoes in tomorrow." A distant noise made them both turn their heads. An engine, then another, and another. Lights cut through the darkness from the other side of the river. "They came early," murmured Tiao, rising quickly. "Wake the others. We have to leave now." There was no time for careful packing. They took only the essentials: water, some dried food, Donna Zuleide's remedies. The old healer refused to stay behind as initially planned. "I changed my mind," she declared firmly. "You need me to cross the Paxiuba Rapids. Without my knowledge, the canoe will capsize." The engines were getting closer. There must have been at least 5 boats, Tiao calculated. Juquinha, still weak but determined, helped push the canoe into the water from the opposite side of the island, where the vegetation was so dense it formed a natural tunnel. They barely fit crouched under the branches that intertwined over their heads. They paddled in absolute silence, using only their hands when the sound of the paddle against the water might betray them. The channel that cut through the middle of the island was so narrow that, in some places, they had to get out of the canoe and drag it through the mud. Mosquitoes attacked mercilessly, but no one dared even to swat them away. Any sudden movement, any sound could mean capture. The voices of the pursuers echoed across the island. Flashlights swept through the vegetation. They had disembarked and were now searching on foot. "I found footprints," someone shouted. "Recent ones." Rayan curled up in the canoe, fear threatening to paralyze her. Tian placed his hand on her shoulder. He didn't say anything, but his gaze conveyed the message: trust. They reached the exit of the channel as the sky began to lighten. Before them, the river opened up, but it wasn't empty. In the distance, they could see 2 motorized canoes patrolling the waters around the island. "They thought of everything," murmured Donna Zuleide. "But so did we." From a straw bag, she took a handful of dried leaves that she threw into the water. The current carried them downstream. When the men in the canoes saw the movement, they immediately headed that way, moving away from the position where Tiao and the others were hiding. "Now!" whispered the old woman. They paddled furiously toward the opposite bank, where the vegetation was even denser. The engine of one of the canoes changed direction. "They had been seen paddle," ordered Tiao. "Don't stop!" They reached the bank and abandoned the canoe, plunging into the dense forest. Hukinya led the way, knowing invisible trails to untrained eyes. Behind, they heard the men's shouts. "There! In the forest!" The sounds of pursuit intensified. They were running now, Tiao carrying Donna Zuleide on his back when the old woman couldn't keep up. Rayan felt her lungs burning, but she didn't slow down. Her small body slipped between bushes and roots with surprising agility. They reached a clearing where a stream cut through the forest. Hukinya pointed to the water. "If we follow the current, we'll reach the Paxiuba Falls. From there, we can descend to the valley without being seen." Tiao nodded. "Let's go by water. It leaves no tracks." They entered the stream, the icy water reaching up to Rayan's waist. They walked against the current, supporting themselves on stones and roots to avoid being dragged away. The sounds of pursuit grew more distant. They had managed to throw them off, at least temporarily. After almost an hour, the stream began to widen. The sound of falling water grew increasingly louder. When they finally reached the Paxiuba Falls, Rayan was breathless. It wasn't a large waterfall, but several smaller drops that formed natural pools between moss-covered rocks. "We need to descend through there," pointed Hukinya to a sequence of stones that formed a kind of natural staircase beside the falls. "It's the only way to the valley." They began the careful descent. The stones were slippery, covered with algae. Each step required total concentration. They were halfway down when they heard it. Voices approaching again. "How did they find us so quickly?" murmured Hukinya, incredulous. "Dogs," answered Tiao, pointing to the top of the falls. Indeed, 2 tracking dogs appeared, followed by Malachias and 3 other men. When they saw the group on the descent, they shouted in triumph, "Get them!" The dogs barked furiously, but couldn't descend the slippery stones. The men, however, began to circle around the falls, looking for an alternative path. "They won't be able to catch up to us in time," said Tiao. "Keep going down." "Don't stop." But when they reached the bottom, an unpleasant surprise awaited them. Josimar and 2 other men were waiting for them, having arrived by another path. "End of the line, Caboclo," announced Rayan's stepfather, pointing a shotgun at the group. "Now give me back what's mine." Tian positioned himself in front of Rayan. "She's not yours." "She never was." Josimar laughed, a sound as cold as the metal of the gun he held. "I have a paper that says otherwise, signed by a judge." "Paper doesn't make family," retorted Tio. "Care can't be bought or forced." Malachias and the others were descending rapidly, surrounding them on all sides. They were trapped between the 2 groups. That's when Donna Zuleide stepped forward. "Enough!" Her voice, normally soft, thundered with surprising authority. "This land is under the protection of the Enchanted Ones." "You have no power here," Josimar mocked. "Shut up, crazy old woman. Your prayers are worth nothing against this." He waved the shotgun. Donna Zuleide didn't back down. Instead, she raised her hands to the sky and began to sing in an ancient language. The men laughed, but the laughter died in their throats when the ground began to tremble. It wasn't a strong tremor, but enough to unbalance them. "What is this?" shouted one of them, frightened. "Just the voice of the earth responding," said the old woman. Last chance. Leave and never look for this child again. Josimar recovered from the initial shock. Coincidence? Some landslide nearby. I'm not scared by witch tricks. He advanced, determined to grab Ryan. That's when a deafening sound echoed through the forest. The ground trembled again, stronger this time. One of the men accompanying Malachias lost his balance and fell, rolling down the steep slope. Trees swayed as if an invisible wind shook them. Another boom, and this time, a huge tree fell between the two groups, temporarily blocking Malachias and his men's path. Earthquake! Someone shouted. Let's get out of here. Malachias's men began to retreat in panic. But Josimar remained firm, the shotgun still pointed. I'm not leaving without the girl. That's when Ryan, who until then had remained hidden behind Tiao, stepped forward. She raised her face, looking directly into her stepfather's eyes for the first time without fear. I'm not yours, she said, her voice small but clear. I never was. I'm a daughter of the river now. Josimar narrowed his eyes. Come here, insolent girl, or I swear I'll... He didn't finish the sentence. The tremor intensified. Rocks began to come loose from the top of the falls. One of them fell dangerously close to him, making him involuntarily back away. His companions were already running into the forest, abandoning him. This is the last time I warn you, insisted Donna Zuleide. This child is under protection. Go away while you can. Another boom, stronger than the previous ones. A crack opened in the ground between Josimar and the group. It wasn't wide, but enough to frighten him. He looked back, seeing himself alone. His eyes met Ryan's again. For an instant, something like doubt passed across his face. Then he lowered the gun. This isn't over, he threatened, before slowly backing away and disappearing into the forest. The tremors gradually diminished until they ceased completely. Tiao looked at Donna Zuleide with a mixture of amazement and respect. How? The old woman smiled enigmatically. There are more mysteries in the forest than you imagine, fisherman. The ancients knew how to speak with the earth. Some of us still remember. There was no time for questions. They took advantage of the confusion to continue their escape, quickly descending to the valley. They walked all day, stopping only for brief rests. When night fell, they had reached a region unknown even to Shukinya. They set up an improvised camp between the giant roots of a centuries-old kapok tree. Exhausted, they ate the little they had brought and fell asleep almost instantly. Except Ryan. The girl stayed awake, looking at the stars that appeared between the treetops. For the first time since she had fled, she felt something different growing inside her. It wasn't just relief from having escaped. It was something deeper, a feeling of belonging. Tiao woke up and found her still observing the sky. He sat beside her in silence. After a few minutes, she asked, "Will he give up now?" The fisherman reflected before answering. People like him rarely give up at once, but each defeat weakens them a little more. And if he comes back, we'll be farther away, stronger, more prepared. He paused. And you'll have more people by your side. What do you mean? The community we're going to, they're people who understand what it means to protect their own. Many of them fled from worse situations than yours. They built a place where they take care of each other. Rayan nodded, absorbing the information. What's the name of this place? Santa Cruz Refuge. But the residents call it Quilombo of the Free. The next morning, they continued the journey. The terrain gradually changed, becoming more elevated. The dense forest gave way to sparser vegetation. After hours of walking, they reached a height from which they could see the valley below, and there, nestled between verdant hills, was a small village. Simple houses of wood and clay, well-tended plots, a river winding alongside. Smoke rose from some chimneys. We've arrived, announced Tiao. The descent to the Quilombo took another hour. When they approached, they were met by a group of men and women who were clearly standing guard. When they recognized Tiao, they lowered their improvised weapons. Tiao of the river, exclaimed a gray-haired man. How long, my friend? Sebastian, greeted Tiao. We need shelter. I've brought friends. The man examined the group with keen eyes, lingering especially on Ryan. Another one for our family? Tiao nodded. If you'll accept her. Sebastian smiled, extending his hand to the girl. Here a child is treasure. There's always room for one more. They were taken to the center of the village where a fire burned. People approached, curious but respectful. They offered food, fresh water, clean clothes. A middle-aged woman who introduced herself as Irasema took Ryan to her house. "I have 3 children," she explained. "One more will be a blessing." In the simple but welcoming house, Ryan met other children, some orphans, others fugitives like her, all with stories of pain but also of hope. During the following weeks, the girl adapted to her new life. She learned to plant, to recognize medicinal herbs with Donna Zulaide, who had decided to stay, to fish with Tio. And mainly, she learned that family wasn't defined by papers or blood, but by care and respect. A month after her arrival, there was a celebration. The entire community gathered around the central fire. Sebastio, who was the leader of the Quilombo, called Ryan to the center of the circle. "Today," he announced, "we officially receive another daughter into our community. As is tradition, she must choose who will be her guardians." Ryan looked around. Her eyes met those of Tiao, who was observing everything with a serene expression. Without hesitation, she approached him. "I choose the one who taught me that courage isn't not crying, but continuing even when afraid." A murmur of approval ran through the assembly. Tiao seemed genuinely surprised. "Are you sure, little one? I'm just a lonely fisherman." Ryan smiled, holding his calloused hand. "Not anymore. Now we're family." The ceremony continued. Sebastian gave Tiao a necklace of red seeds, similar to what Donna Zulaide had given Rayane. "The symbol of responsibility," he explained. "Wear it with honor." Later, when the celebrations were over and most had retired, Tiao and Ryan sat by the river that cut through the village. The stars reflected in the calm water, creating the illusion of a duplicate sky. "You know," said Tiao, "when I found you that afternoon, I thought I was just helping a lost child." He paused, looking at the starry sky. "I didn't imagine I would be finding my way back home." Ryan looked at him, curious. "What do you mean?" "I spent years alone, convinced it was better that way, safer." He smiled slightly. "You taught me that true safety comes from having people to fight for, to stay for." The girl rested her head on his shoulder, feeling for the first time in a long time, completely at peace. "What happens now?" she asked. Tiao looked at the horizon, where the first light of dawn began to tinge the sky. "Now we live, little one day at a time, building something that no one can take from us." In the years that followed, the Quilombo of the free grew. More people arrived, bringing stories of escape, of searching for freedom. Tiao and Ryan built a house near the river. He continued fishing and teaching others to respect the waters. She, following in Donna Zulaide's footsteps, became knowledgeable about plants and their healing secrets. Josimar was never seen again. There was a rumor that he had problems with justice for other crimes, losing everything he owned. Others said that the healer's curse had followed him, taking away his peace until he found redemption. The truth no one knew for sure. And for Ryan, it no longer mattered. One afternoon, years later, she found a girl hiding among the bushes at the riverbank, small, frightened, with marks that she immediately recognized. Without asking questions, she extended her hand. "If you help me gather these herbs," she said softly, "I can teach you to make a medicine that heals from within." The girl hesitated, her eyes teary. "Heals what?" Ryan smiled, recognizing her own past in those eyes. "The pain that has no name. The one we carry here." She pointed to her chest. "Come, in my house there's hot food and a clean hammock." As they walked back to the village, Rayhan looked at the sky, where the sun was beginning to set, painting the horizon red and gold. She thought about all the river bends that life had traveled to bring her there, of the scars that became maps, of the fear that had transformed into purpose. "You know," she said to the girl walking beside her, "first we learn to breathe, then to not be afraid of our own tears, and then one day we discover that we can be shelter for someone, just as someone was for us." And so, on the banks of a nameless river, in a community built by calloused hands and resilient hearts, the cycle renewed itself, like the waters that always find their way back to the sea, only to return as rain, nourishing the same forests that once sheltered them. Did you identify with this journey of overcoming and new beginnings? Share your impressions in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to learn more stories that, like the Quilombo of the free, remind us that family is who welcomes us when we need it most. Leave your like and help